Welcome to the Trust Factor Radio, bringing you interviews and insights to unlock the power of the subconscious mind to create authority, credibility, and trust. With your host, the Authority Architect and best-selling author, Neil Howe.
Hello and welcome to the show. This is your host, Neil Howe, and today my guest is Jaci Lund. She is the founder of TreebirdBranding.com, and she helps businesses define their brands and reach their audiences and live their best brand lives through graphic design, writing, strategic positioning, and personal counsel. She founded Treebird Branding in 2014 and works with restaurants, luxury apartment communities, small businesses and entrepreneurs across the Southeast and the country. Welcome to the show, Jaci Lund.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, tell us a little bit more about your background in marketing, Jaci, as well as Treebird Branding.
So I started out, I went to the creative circus for graphic design, and I ended up at a PR firm doing their their graphics, and it led into some branding opportunities. And I was there for about 5 years, became their creative director. And then it was time for me to, go out on my own. And so I did. And we started at the kitchen table about 5 years ago. Now we're a team of about 10, and we've got an office on the West Side. We've got probably about 80 active clients right now. And then there's also the ones that, come and go. We work primarily in the restaurant industry, as mentioned in the bio. And so we also do a lot of, luxury apartment complexes, small business owners, and then some corporate stuff here and there on some charity, components too.
Well, that is excellent. Congratulations on that success, growing quickly like that in just a short number of years. That is some great stuff. Talk to me about your clients. What are they really wanting when it comes to their branding?
I think that, most of our clients, because they're in the lifestyle industry, they all are looking for a way to communicate clearly and to a kind of, more discerning and sophisticated audience. And so that's really, what we go after to try and solve those issues for them is, they all want to look cool and be relevant and, but also be lasting. So I think that's why we're a good fit.
Mm-hmm. And what problems does that cause for them? What kind of problems do you see them encounter on a daily basis?
For the biggest problem, well, there's kind of two. One of them is that they, their inconsistency. So a client will have a logo and a brand, and then they'll have, their website, and then they'll have their social media. And none of these things look like they're from the same business if they're existing. They're kind of stuck with certain elements, and they see what the other guy is doing, and so they think that looks cool, and they want to do something to emulate that style that has nothing to do with their, existing brand. And so we see a lot of, inconsistencies that once we start working with the client, and whether it's a branding or a rebranding, is really honing in and making sure that everything is, tied together. And if you take all the elements and throw them on a table, they all look like they're from the same place, even though they might be a little bit different. And, the other issue is just, understanding who their audience really is. And I think a lot of clients, they want a certain audience, but that might not be reality for them about who their audience is. Also making sure that, their brand, they might not be the audience for their brand. So that they might, a client, for instance, might just have an aversion to a specific, font or something, but that might be the exact right thing we need to convey the message to their audience. And so we've got to work through that a bit.
So what is the issue with, not having all the pieces coming together? Is it just a lack of strategy, not really thinking it through and just doing a little bit of marketing here and there and starting this and that?
I mean, that's really kind of hitting the nail on the head there. There's a lack of strategy. It's also, it's really important too that with your audience that you build trust. And if you have inconsistent branding, they believe that the experience with you will be inconsistent. And so it's really important that all these pieces tie together so that they can it just reiterates your level of service or your ability to give them what they're, coming to you for. It reiterates your brand promise by having the consistency with your pieces.
Mm-hmm. And who is it in the restaurant business that deals with this? Who makes the decisions on the branding?
It depends. So like one of our clients is Ann Quatrano, and so she has Bacchanalia, Star Provisions, Fish Camp, Float Away. And she is the point person for everything. And, she's truly like one of the most visionary people to work with. It's fantastic. And so we do literally everything with her from, the whole brand down to stickers. Whereas we have another restaurant group we work with Indigo Road, and they're phenomenal. They've been able to, grow to, I think, like 18 units in about 8 years. And so they have Oku in town here, Donetto, Oak, Coletta up at Avalon. And theirs is a little bit more disseminated in that, Steve Palmer, he's the operating manager, and he is the point person for some things, but it disseminates then down through his team. So sometimes we're working with GMs, sometimes we're working with opening managers, sometimes we're working with chefs, and so it's just a completely different experience.
But they all have to understand what that brand is supposed to be. So how important is the positioning and the voice of the company?
I would say it's just as important as your logo, and that you have, this foundation for which to speak about your brand upon. You have your, like I said, your core values and everything all communicated clearly from the beginning. It's, like the roots of the tree essentially is what we talk about. And that if you don't have that, once you kind of set your brand out into the world, if your team isn't speaking about it correctly, your brand kind of starts to fall apart. And so it's important to have that consistency, not only visually, but also throughout your positioning statement as well.
So everybody needs to be on the same page as far as what the brand story is, and tell that to all the customers.
Mm-hmm. A lot of the times too, we give our clients their brand guide, and it has their branding and their logo usage, and it has their positioning, and we encourage them to use that as part of their employee training.
So how do you solve this problem with the branding? What are the steps that you take to implement if you're stepping in and creating a new brand or defining the brand for the company?
Well, the first thing we do is we like to listen to our clients. So we have kind of a kickoff conversation where we want to hear everything about, problems you're having, great successes that you've had. If your brand was a celebrity, who would it be? Colors that you're attracted to, what your audience likes, brands that your audience like. And we really start there to help kind of hone in on what we can do for the brand. Then we, basically we dive right in and start with a couple of options for the branding. And it's really, sometimes we nail it on the first try within one of those brands. But what we're trying to do at that point is establish an even tighter direction of where we need to go. If it needs to be more illustrative, if it can be a little bit more fun and hand rendered, if, it needs to be something more sophisticated, we try to offer that range for our clients so that they can be part of the process too, of eliminating, parts of the path that we could go down.
Mm-hmm. How long does it take to pull something like this off?
That usually takes about 3 weeks, sometimes less, sometimes a little bit more for our first round. And then, after we do another round or two of edits, and usually by that point, we've got it pretty much nailed down. It takes about, at the most 2 months would probably be like the longest, but usually we can get it done in about a month.
So as far as rebranding a restaurant, what do they have to think about? What items are included in that?
Well, what's interesting is that, I think there's an issue that people think that a rebrand is kind of part of a death spiral. And what we want to convey to our clients or potential clients, that a rebranding is also like a sign of success, that you're doing so well that you're able to keep up with, trends, that you're not just sitting on your old look in your old menu that you're changing and always ever evolving. So with a rebrand, it's kind of like this careful fine line that we walk very carefully to make sure that we're not alienating, previous, loyal customers of yours. And then also making sure that we're communicating to the next generation that's coming up. I think a successful one that we just did was Bacchanalia. Honestly, we, took their existing logo, which was horizontal and it was very traditional. And then we made it into a square and the letters all stack on top of each other. And it was a really simple change, but it was a modernization that helped speak to like the younger generations.
Now, when it comes to branding, how often should a company be looking at their brand and maybe looking to change it up or freshen it up, like you were saying?
Well, I think that if you've been properly branded, all you need to do is a little like touch up here and there, maybe every 3 to 5 years. You should always be looking at your brand. But, seeing if there's something that's not working or if there's something that can be more consistent. But your brand should last you for a while, which is, again, why we don't like to do anything too trendy for our clients. We like looks that are more custom and that, are long lasting. But, there's sometimes there's certain colors that just look dated, like lime green was like the color about 8 years ago. And now, you don't see it on anything. So just making sure that you're not holding on to something like that you could easily, change to freshen up your look. But, also making sure that you're not losing something by doing that and doing something just to be on a trend.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the misconceptions about branding, Jaci?
I think, a couple misconceptions is that they can do it themselves. That clients a lot of times will come to us because they're frustrated because they tried to do it themselves and they realize that it is actually really hard to create a logo and to create a brand identity is tough. And building a website isn't that easy if that's not what you're good at. We can't just, open a restaurant, but we can build a website pretty, efficiently. And so I think there's that aspect. And also, we're speaking a lot about restaurants, but it goes with apartments as well that we work on, that not anticipating that they're going to need us too much after the brand is done, that they can DIY it after that. And that, while you're busy with dealing with operations and getting your feet wet, that you still want to have your team kind of on board and ready to go. There's going to be menu changes. There's going to be brochures that need to be made, social media graphics. And so I would say you could cut us loose, a little bit later down the road, 3 to 6 months. It could kind of pull back on some of that.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the misconceptions about maybe the importance of branding? Is it like paramount? You got to get your name, your logo, your story out there. Do you feel like there's a lot of companies out there that just don't put the money and the effort into it?
There are some. I think there's been a shift recently, though, and people are understanding more now than ever how important their brand is. I feel like this was a battle that was a lot tougher to fight, 10 years ago when I first started. And maybe it's just the caliber of clients that we're attracting to. We're not really getting so many that, their aunt designed it. And so, can we use this type of stuff? They're realizing that, visually it is so important to have this identity and to understand who they are. And it's not just, their level of service or what's on their menu or, because they're so competitive too. There's so many restaurants, there's so many apartments, there's so many small businesses, and they're realizing that they have to, this is kind of like, ground level of what you have to be competitive in the market.
Mm. And how do you measure that as far as, what you're putting into it, into your branding part, as far as, the success that might come from it?
I mean, it's definitely not something that's like very easily measured. I guess our way of kind of measuring is that, and our ability to grow as a firm directly correlates with our clients' abilities to grow as well. Is that our clients keep growing and expanding and multiplying, and so we kind of do with them. But as far as like specific metrics, we can look at like if we did a social media post about something, or if we take over a client's social media, we can see like what that does to their, you know, analytics, for their Google and their page hits. But as far as like what the brand itself does, it's really more of a feeling.
It's more of a feeling that gets customers engaged and wanting to be in business with you.
Yeah.
So as far as the look, if we're talking websites here, what makes a good website that's going to stand out and get people to take whatever action that they're supposed to take?
Big, sexy photos. The number one that's the one that we try and get for all of our clients it's, we want things that are just very image heavy and beautiful images, whether it's, of an inside of an apartment or it's the menu for a restaurant, some dishes, interiors, exteriors, their staff. We want to be able to show that in a big, beautiful way. I've had a client that referred to it once as he wanted his website to look like food porn. And we can do that for you. But, we want people to go on and just salivate when they go and look at your burgers. So it kind of starts there. And then it's really all about simplicity. Your customer does not want to have to click to open up a PDF of a menu. And so as much as possible, we try and have that available for them so they can see it. We're also not really designing too many websites that have a lot of clicks and that we're doing long scrolling websites. And so, your website is becoming more just like an extended landing page for your business. And it's not as, we don't have so many pages that we used to have to do.
Mm-hmm. And how important now is mobile? Because I guess, especially in the restaurant industry, I imagine most of those searches are done on mobile devices.
Yeah, I mean, if your website isn't mobile friendly, you may as well not have a website and let people just go on it, find your information from Google and Yelp, which I obviously don't recommend.
What is one of the reasons that might hold a company back from rebranding their business?
Well, I think there's a lot of fear, like I said, about, what does that do to our existing people that love their branding? There's also a lot of budget that has been spent on the old brand. So if they spent, $2,000-$3,000 on a sign and they've had to spend, thousands of dollars on printing and they've gotten shirts and everything, sometimes it's really hard to let that go and that you've spent so much of your budget on it. So then we're asking you to pay us to give you a bunch of things that you need to then recreate, get things reprinted, refabricate signs. So sometimes, it could be that we're being presented with, we want to do a rebrand, but we have to keep our sign. And that's a problem that we, like to solve for our clients.
Jaci, what point does somebody have to get to realize that it is time to rebrand? Are there any specific things that happen within the business or, things just going stale? Are there any, cues that really says, okay, it's time for a rebrand and we need to refresh?
Yeah, potentially if you're, realizing that your customer base is stagnant, that you're not, it's a generational thing too, that if you don't have people from younger generations being attracted and coming to your restaurant, if you're not bringing them in, then eventually you're not going to have any guests left to attract. So I think that's part of it. If you're not busy on a Friday night, it might mean it's time to, put some marketing budget surrounding a rebrand or potentially some social media, PR pushes and things like that.
And what's the potential cost to not doing that?
Closing, I guess, which would be, too bad.
Yeah, I think in today's market, there's so many. I constantly think of the restaurants. There's so many different restaurants to choose from that you've got to constantly be relevant and with the times to attract the people. Otherwise, they'll go elsewhere.
Right. Well, and yeah, it is so competitive, and because there's people that are just trend seekers. And that they're going to just be constantly looking for the next trendy, cool thing. And so if that's what you start out as, you're going to be done, in a couple of years. So if you're able to establish a really strong brand from the get-go that's going to be long-lasting, that isn't based on trends, which is what we try and provide for our clients, you're going to have, we're here to create institutions. And that's what we want for our clients. And so maybe you didn't, maybe you don't have what it takes to look like an institution because you have some issues with your brand. We want to take that and reposition you to be an institution so you can rely that your business is going to be around for, the next 10 years or so.
So good branding can really lead to some lasting success. Speaking of successes, take me through a couple of businesses that you have worked with. Tell me about the problems that they were having before they came to you, what you were able to do for them, and ultimately, what was that transformation? What was the difference to the bottom line?
Well, Star Provisions and Ann Quatrano's restaurants is a great example of that. Almost all of her restaurants, except for Fish Camp, existed before we started working together about 10 years ago. And so, there's been great success in being able to take an old brand that has existed as an Atlanta institution and keep it fresh for her. She also moved from, Westside Provisions out then to Atlanta Industrial. And so being able to, move her clientele out to that new space and prepare them for the new visuals that are going on there. I'm sorry, Ellsworth Industrial, not Atlanta Industrial. That's been a really successful experience. I can't really say exactly what's going on with the bottom line, but we, as far as, we're proud of the work that we've been able to do to be able to continue her legacy, in Atlanta through her brand.
Great. So what was it that really attracted you to branding and marketing, Jaci?
I like solving problems, and it's really interesting to me to take something from someone that they've been thinking about for potentially years. And we're the first time that they're seeing something visual happen with their brand. And then with the positioning too, this is the first time that they're seeing copy and content that's going to start going out to their potential future audience. So it can be kind of an emotional experience for some people. Some people, they don't care. It is what it is. But it's really fun for us to go on this journey with our clients, and that we're taking just, ideas out of thin air and distilling it down on page.
What is one thing that you learned early on when thinking about branding and dealing with clients that still impacts how you do business today?
Oh man, that's a good question. I would say that it doesn't matter if you're a barbecue concept or you're one of the best restaurants in America. There is a sophistication to every single brand that we work on. And that is a huge part of what I have learned that I want to provide for all of our clients. And, you could be a trucking company and you're still going to have a level of sophistication when you work with us.
Yes, great. Okay, well, talk to me about how people can get in touch with you if they are looking for a company to do the branding or marketing for them.
Yeah, well, you can always find us at treebirdbranding.com, and you can email me at Jaci at treebirdbranding.com. And I would love to talk to you.
Excellent. And, if somebody is looking for a branding company, what kind of questions should they be asking? Or when somebody comes to you, what kind of questions do they ask you?
A lot of times they really just want to tell me their story and tell me their problems and tell me their issues that they've had. So and the more information we have, the better. So really just make sure that you are prepared to just talk about your experience. I think sometimes we will have people come to us that aren't ready to actually get started yet. They come to us almost a little too soon. On the other hand, we get looped in with some projects that we've been brought in too late, and we'll make it work. But just be ready to answer all the tough questions and know who your audience is and who you're going after and why.
And there are any cautions that you could say if somebody went to a brand company and they said something or did something that would say that they weren't necessarily the best company to go with?
Well, I think if you're going to a company and you're saying things like, I don't know what I like, but I know it when I see it, I would definitely look to yourself first, because that's a tough client to please. If someone's looking for another branding company and they're, not sure what to look for, I would look at who their clients are and also make sure that their look and what they're providing for clients is all different, and that you want to make sure that you're not going to be branded in a way that looks like anybody else.
Mm-hmm. How often does somebody come to you and say, well, I've got this idea and I want my brand to look like this, this, and this, and you just know it's not going to work and you try and advise them on something else?
It's pretty rare. I think most people that come to us have come to us with a recommendation, and they're kind of like, well, what do you like? They're looking to us to, make them look good. And they trust us. If someone is telling us very specifically what they want, I usually am telling them that we're not the firm for them. That's probably happened, I don't know, 3 times at the most over 5 years that someone has come in like that. Yeah.
All right. Well, Jaci, it's been a pleasure talking with you today. I really appreciate you spending the time and giving us that information that you have about branding. It is definitely very important to put the face of your business first. And that's what everybody...
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. And I would definitely... encourage anybody listening to go to the website treebirdbranding.com and have a look around and see some of the work that Jaci has done for her clients. Jaci Lund, thanks very much for being my guest on the Trust Factor Radio today.
My pleasure.
And to our listening audience, if you like what you hear, hit that like button and share, and we'll see you next time on the show.
You've been listening to the Trust Factor Radio with Neil Howe. To learn about the resources mentioned in the show and to listen to past episodes, go to thetrustfactorradio.com. To get a copy of the book, The Trust Factor, go to thetrustfactorbook.com. If you are ready to act now and build your authority, credibility, and trust, schedule a consultation with Neil at theauthorityarchitect.com.